Hey, what's going on? This is Dylan with Dylan Talks Tone. Today we're going to talk about guitar cables. This is probably one of the deepest ends of tone snobbery and snake oil and all of those things on the internet. I mean, I would put this in with like poly versus nitro finish affecting tone. I would put this in with paper and oil caps. I mean, I would put this in with lots of stuff like that, where there's so much marketing crap that goes on with guitar cables. The thing is that there is some stuff that really does matter. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get to the bottom of it. I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about a couple things that don't matter, a couple things that do. And then what I did is I actually bought 4 cables from 4 different price points. You're going to hear them side by side, and you're going to tell me which one you think you like the best. We're going to do the same way that we normally do, where we're not going to put the results right next to it, because I want you to make an honest opinion, because this is one of those things that people hear with their eyes. Speaking of hearing with their eyes, let's talk about gold connectors. This is a really nice fancy cable. Oh, it's kind of thick. It's got a gold connector. Oh wow, this thing must be really nice. I think I could probably charge $65 for it. You hear that a lot. Do you have to have a gold connector? No. At the level that we're dealing with here, the conductivity difference between this and a nickel one is going to make 0 difference whatsoever. Is it going to make any difference with corrosion protection, for example? Not really. I have a bunch of these. So this is one of my cables. I actually don't make cables anymore. We're not selling any of my stuff in this video. I don't make cables anymore, but I have a bunch of these that are on the east coast of the United States, like Myrtle Beach and all up and down South Carolina, gigging like 250 nights a year. And I've seen them a couple years after I built them, and they wear just as much as a regular nickel one. I don't want to say they corrode, but like the finish rubs, they wear, they look just as old and beat up as any nickel one. There's no, and this is in a high salt, high corrosion environment. And the nickel one sitting right next to it looks just fine too. So there's really no benefit to spending extra money. The only reason these have gold connectors, in fact, I wanted to kind of buck the system and use chrome connectors on my cables, except that the connectors that I wanted only came in gold. That's the only reason we used gold. But do you have to spend extra money for gold? Absolutely not. It's a crock. Don't worry about it. You want to make sure that you have good strain relief, and that the cables are they're built well, so that they're durable, so that you don't, you're rocking and you're like running across the stage and putting your foot up on the monitor for a big solo, and you rip your cable and all of a sudden it breaks and you have no sound. Completely ruins your moment and you're no longer a guitar hero. You don't want to have that happen. So a durable cable is important. You also want to make sure that the crush resistance, like when you step on it or roll an amp across it or something, isn't going to break it. Some of the really, really cheap cables are not super durable. That might be a little bit of a trial and error thing, but you can kind of feel it. A lot of people want to put that like Spectra Flex coating on their, cable cover on the outside. I hate that stuff. I have one with the Spectraflex on the outside, and I never use it because it like gets caught on stuff and it like rubs, and I almost want to give you a rug burn when you're like spooling it. That stuff is made to make it look fancy and feel fancy so that they can charge a lot of money for it. Internally, is the cable any better? Not really. So what actually does make a difference with a guitar cable? Let me show you how they're made. Alright, so if you look at this guitar cable, you can see that there's a couple of stripes here. We've got the rubber insulation on the outside, then there's a layer of braid, and then there is some white foamy stuff, and then there is the center core. Let's go ahead and get that stripped off. Alright, so here we have the braid on the outside, okay? And then we've got, now this is what made our cables so amazing, is it's got this other black layer in here. Now most other cables aren't going to have this, so we'll peel that out of the way. Most cables are going to basically look like this. They're going to have that braid on the outside, and they're going to have that foam on the inside, and then they're going to have like so. So you're basically going to have your outside braid, which is your ground. You're going to have this center conductor, and the effectiveness of this foam to cut down on the capacitance that we're about to talk about is kind of the key. And then the center conductor. So that is the construction of the inside of a guitar cable. Okay, so now that we know why they're made, how they're made, why is that important? Because the cable acts as a capacitor. So if we have that center conductor and we have the ground sleeve on the outside, the way capacitors work in very simple terms, and all you electronics engineers that always jump in my comments and be like, you're too simple with this. Well, you know what? Not everybody is an electronic engineer. I am, maybe you are, but not everybody watching these videos. So just calm down and let me talk about it simply. So we have the outer conductor of that cable and we have the inner conductor of that cable. Basically what's happening is anytime you have that kind of situation where you have the ground on the outside and a center conductor where the signal is, you're going to have a little bit of loss of signal that goes from the center conductor through the white stuff that I just showed you in the cable out to the ground. That happens when anytime you have two wires laying next to each other. It's called capacitive loss, okay? And the longer a cable is, the more you have. Now, a lot of people have made up this number like, it doesn't matter if it's anything less than 18.5 feet, it's not going to make any difference. Okay, the test that we're about to do today is going to be with 10-foot cables. So you tell me if they're wrong or right. Okay, so when we have capacitive loss, what does that do? Well, it's just like in anything else. Capacitance, when capacitance happens at this level and at this low voltage, we're only talking millivolts here, what happens is you end up losing some high frequencies. The more capacitive loss that is present, the more high frequencies you lose. We did a video, and I'll link it up here, where we took a 500-foot spool of cable, and you could hear how much signal completely went away, and it sounded like a muddy mess. Now, are we going to play with a 500-foot cable? No. But it does compound itself. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you follow our channel, you'll know, like if you watch, any of our online classes on patreon.com or Skillshare, any of that stuff, you'll know that I talk about this all the time. We're talking about the guitar as a complete system. So from the pickup to the first amplifier. What I mean by that is the cable is part of a passive guitar circuit, not an active one, but a passive guitar circuit. The cable is part of the guitar. It's not part of the pedal board. It's part of the guitar until the first amplifier. So if you have a tuner like a Boss TU3 with a preamp in it, that would be your first amplifier. If you have a boost pedal, if you have your first overdrive pedal, it's not anything that you leave on all the time, right? And it's on and it's got a little preamp in there or a buffer or anything like that. The first buffered input, anything before that is part of the guitar circuit. So if you add capacitance by the length of your cable or the quality of your cable, then you're going to take away potentially high frequencies from your sound. So if you have a really long cable run, 30, 40 feet to your first pedal, then you're going to be losing signal. I like to keep my first cable before my pedal board at about 15 feet, 10 or 15 feet. 15, I like 15. And then after that, it doesn't matter because it goes through a bunch of buffers, and if it has to go a long way to the pedal board or to the amp, that's fine because there's a bunch of buffers on all the time, and it's okay. But passive signal, this is part of the guitar. It's weird to think about, but it's part of the guitar, and it is pulling signal from the potential that the pickup can make, okay? So what that means is the amount of capacitance of the cable can have a direct impact on your tone. So the way it's measured is in picofarads per foot. So what we're going to do is after this test, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you 4 different cables from 4 different price points, and I want you to tell me which one you think sounds the best, or if you can tell a difference. Put it in the comments. And then when we're done, I'm going to show you the difference in capacitance between those cables, because that's the number one, besides durability and looks and stuff, that's the number one quality difference between a cheap cable and an expensive cable. The thing is that it all depends on what you start with. So if you have a guitar that doesn't make a ton of highs, doesn't have tons of clarity to it, and it's pretty dark sounding in the beginning, it might not matter, because you might not be able to hear the difference. But if you have a guitar like a Strat or a Tele that's nice and bright and crisp and clear and has a lot of clarity to it, and you take away from that, you might be able to hear a difference with the cable. Not everybody will, and in not every situation. So let's go ahead and listen to 4 different cables, and you put in the comments which one you think is the most expensive, or which one you think is the cheapest. There's 4 of them. Well, I just took the thumbnail for the video. You heard it. Could you tell a difference between those 4 cables? Now, here is the crazy part. These are the measurements for all 4 cables. What they are doesn't matter. Well, kind of. What they are doesn't matter for our purposes. What does matter is the measurements relative to each other for how much they cost. What I mean by that is, you would think that a more expensive cable would have lower capacitance per foot. Typically, I'm just going to tell you, Dylan cables were 21 picofarads per foot. The cheapest one here, I think the GLS was what, 42 picofarads per foot, something like that. And then I think the next most expensive one was 37, and then maybe 39. But look at how much the most expensive one was. Mogami 2524 cable with Neutrik ends. That cable cost me $63, I think. And it was worse than the cheapest one. I have said forever that Mogami is the biggest ripoff in cables, but they just have a really good marketing department. I said it when I was selling against them. I'm not even selling against them. I'll say it now. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I think the best bang for your buck cable is probably this D'Addario Planet Waves cable. Is pretty stinking killer. I will say though, measurement wise, that this $15 GLS audio one wasn't that much worse. And I don't know that you could hear the difference between them. You let me know in the comments. If you could tell a difference between the most expensive to the cheapest, knowing now that the most expensive was the worst. So what are you even paying for? It's ridiculous. My name is Dylan. This is Dylan Talks Tone. Talk amongst yourselves. Make sure you be nice. And maybe we'll see you on a Thursday live. Oh, also, in the next 24 hours, I'm going to pick some random comments from this video, and I'm going to give all these cables away. So make sure you comment within the first 24 hours, and yeah, maybe you'll get a cable. They're all pretty good.